What's up, fellow adult collectors? Welcome to Civilian Collectibles. In this video, I'll be reviewing the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Superman based on his appearance in the animated series. This is my second review video for the McFarlane DC line. My first one was about the comic book versions of Superman and Harley Quinn. So if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check that out later on. Anyway, to aid in your potential hunt for this figure, here is a shot of the barcode on the bottom of the box. Now, with Superman released from his plastic prison, I'm going to give him another full rotation on the spinner, that way you can see him all the way around. If this is your first time landing on my channel, hi, my name is Seville, and here I like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. With the rotation complete, we'll get right into the review. Once everything's out of the package, here's what you get with the figure. The little black stand, the trading card, the extra hands, as well as the steel beam accessory. The stand itself is the basic one that's going to come with most figures, although I am a bit surprised that this one didn't include a flight stand like the comic book version did. The back of the trading card does have its own data file read-up, which you can pause the screen and read if you'd like to here. The steel beam piece is fairly basic, but still looks pretty nice with a shiny silver color, and it does have a crumpled up spot on one end that fits nicely into the open grip hands. Both hands are exactly the same, so you could put it in either or. With the accessories covered, now let's take a good slow look at the figure itself, both up and down, as well as front and back. I was kind of hoping that the process of seeing the initial images for this figure versus having it in hand would be very similar to what I went through with the comic book version of Superman. A lot of people thought that the legs of the comic Superman weren't really in proportion with the rest of the body, like they were too small. Personally, I disagreed with that. I thought they looked fine. But I can't say that continues to be the case here on the animated Superman. The shoulder width on this figure is 3 times as wide as the waistline around the belt. Granted, the Bruce Timm style animations did have the triangular torso shape, but not quite to this degree. On a more positive note, I do appreciate that the S symbol on his chest is sculpted outwardly, and the paint on it flows very nicely. But I really dislike the way that cape just sits on his shoulders. Like, it doesn't appear like it should be tucked in or anything. It's just hanging out there. Moving on down to the legs, it almost looks like everything below the belt should be 2 separate figures. The best way I can think of to describe how the legs look would be pencil thin. This Superman most definitely skipped leg day. His arms are almost twice as big around as his legs, and that should definitely not be a thing. This figure is very top heavy, and because of that it has fallen over multiple times during the process of making this video. Now let's compare the 2 McFarlane figures together. In my opinion, there's absolutely no question which of these is the better figure. Now of course, I do know that the different sources have their different styles and therefore do require different approaches. However, I do believe that the approach to the comic version was much better than the approach to the animated version. Just glancing at these side by side, it looks like the shoulder width of the animated version is twice as wide as the comic version, while the legs are half the size. Now, let's compare the McFarlane animated Superman to the DC Collectibles animated Superman. Just for clarification, the DC Collectibles version you see here on the right is the first one that was made for the 2-pack with Lois. There was a single-pack version made later based on the Justice League animated series, but that line was exclusive to subscribers of the DC Universe streaming app. I did make a comparison video for that Superman as well, so if you haven't seen it, it might be worth checking out once you finish this video. To me, the DC Collectibles version that you see here looks a lot more natural than the McFarlane version. The shoulder width of the 6-inch figure is smaller compared to the waistline, while the legs are larger. In fact, the legs on the 6-inch figure are actually bigger and thicker than the ones on the 7-inch figure. In my opinion, the only advantage the McFarlane version has over the DC Collectibles version is a little more articulation. I will do a full run-through of the articulation here in just a minute, but before I do, I just want to show this Superman next to a few others from Mattel. On the left, we have the original one from the DC Superheroes line, and on the right, we have the DC Rebirth version. And now on the left, we have Superman from the first Injustice video game, and on the right, we have the metallic Superman from Injustice 2. Now, let's take a look at all of Superman's articulation. The head does have a pretty good range of motion up and down, as well as full rotation side to side. The shoulders do have full rotation all the way around, plus move outward, but the cape can get in the way. Plus, they do have the butterfly joints for further movement front to back. The biceps do have full rotation as well, but the elbows are only single jointed, so they can only get to about 90 degrees. The wrists also have full rotation, as well as the peg for back and forth movement. The torso is split above and below the abdomen, which does offer a good range of rotation, but in the end doesn't help much with crunching forward or leaning backwards. For his legs, I'm going to hold him in a flight stand because there's no way a single leg will ever hold him up. They do spread out pretty far sideways and do pretty well kicking forward and back too. The knees are double jointed and fold up pretty well. The ankles do have full rotation and pivot motion, plus there's a toe joint. So overall, he can get into some pretty good flight poses. So with all that said, it's time to run this McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Superman the Animated Series action figure through my guidelines for a complete and fair review. Since this is the first of the McFarlane animated figures that I've personally owned, I will call this a new sculpt. Plus, it does have enough detail in all the right places to earn this point as well. However, the scale and proportions of this figure are really weird, so I'm going to have to dock that, and it's going to lead me to dock the accuracy point as well. On the quality control side of things, the top-heavy nature of the figure is already leading to loose joints in the legs, which in turn is already causing lots of balance problems. Back on the plus side though, it does have more than 20 points of articulation and includes a few accessories. The roughly $20 price point is fair for this line, plus they should be readily available pretty much anywhere now, leading to a 6 out of 10 star rating, meaning it's still a pretty awesome figure that's worth owning for casual fans, but it could have been better. So overall, it's not necessarily a bad figure, but if you've already got the DC Collectibles versions, these aren't necessarily worth replacing those. However, if you're just now jumping into collecting with the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, these are worth adding to your shelves. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video,
get over here!
And subscribe to Civilian Collectibles.